and participate in this special event without any obstacle. Praise and salutation upon our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who had brought us to the path of light from the darkness in this life. So, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to inform that today's event is a part of cooperation between Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo, Indonesia, and University Malaya, Malaysia, especially Faculty of Psychology and Education and Faculty of Education. Some activities that have been conducted in the cooperation are workshops, visiting lecturers, and this Studium Generale. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, let's open this event by reciting Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The next agenda is listening to Indonesian National Anthem, Indonesia Raya, and Malaysia National Anthem, Malaysia, Negara.
Iya itu. Oke, Kak, mute.
The next part is speech that will be delivered by Deputy Dean of Faculty of Education, University Malaya, Associate Professor Dr. Husaina Banu Kinayatullah. Time is yours.
Ya, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I would like to thank the chairperson for today, and also I would like to welcome all the delegates to the Studium Generale Improving Education Quality in Post-Pandemic Era that is organized by Faculty of Education, University Malaya, with together in collaboration with UMSIDA, and also it's also written here Campus Merdeka, and I would like to thank to the dean, especially the dean that is Dr. Aktim Wahyuni for actually organizing and also providing opportunity for Faculty of Education to organize this event. And I think the topic for today is very timely because education quality is, I would say, that one of the evolving issue now, because what the education quality is defined is need to be consistently redefined based on the evolving educational challenges, which is consistently changing. And COVID-19 pandemic has taught us to actually rethink about what is actually education quality. And education quality, we can see that all the education academicians and also teachers all over the world has been consistently changing their teaching and learning style, that is from the hybrid to online, online to hybrid, and also distance education. So there are a lot of issues in education quality, especially in terms of infrastructure, in terms of internet access, technological device, technological literacy, and so on. So it is very important for us to learn from each other, that is from each other, and try to benchmark what can be done in our own context, because people come from different contexts, and what is needed as education quality from different contexts differs from one to each other. So I would like to welcome this collaboration, especially this intellectual discourse, because this is very important for us to rethink and reframe our education in terms of quality in the post-COVID era. With that, I would like to thank you, and also I hope that you would have the fruitful discussion, and also we would learn, and also our collaboration would pursue. With that, thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I want to say thank you so much for Deputy Dean of Faculty of Education, University Malaya. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to the second speech delivered by the Dean Faculty of Psychology and Education, Universitas Muhammadiyah, Sidoarjo. For Dr. Aktim Wahyuni MIG, time is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Mbak Rania. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning to everyone. Good night for Brasilia time, because now Brasilia time is 11 o'clock. Yes, Ricardo. Alhamdulillah wa syukrillah ala nimatillah la haula la quwata illa billah. Yes, the Honorable, the Deputy Dean, Mrs. Husaina Kinayatullah from Faculty of Education, University of Malaya. And then there is Mr. Nazri from University of Malaya too. And Ricardo, my friend from Brasilia. Then Nazgul Abalova from Kyrgyzstan, and all the participants of this Studium Generale. Let's thank to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala that we have good time for this morning, so we can attend together for this Studium Generale. In this occasion, I just would like to thank for this cooperation between Faculty of Education of University of Malaya and Faculty of Psychology and Education, Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo. Hopefully, this collaboration can provide benefits for both universities, and we can expand our cooperation for many fields like journal research and then publication and then what is visiting lecture for others department. So our cooperation will be run until for many years. I hope like that, Miss Husaina. Thank you very much for inshallah. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time for this this morning. So, what is for opening this program? Let us reading by Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hope that this Studium Generale will be run well until finish. Nasallallahu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Ahtim Wahyuni MAG, for your speech. And ladies and gentlemen, the next section is the main agenda of today's Studium Generale that will be directed by our moderator, Mr. Wahyu Taufik MED. He is the lecturer of English Education Study Program, Faculty of Psychology and Education, Universitas Muhammadiyah, Sidoarjo. Mr. Wahyu Taufik, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Miss Rani, for the time given. Can you hear my voice clearly, Mbak Rani?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak, Ibu, and all participants. Yeah. To start with, let's praise to Allah for giving us chance to have this valuable meeting on Tuesday, November 30, 2021. And let me say again that this is a very valuable occasion because on this Studium Generale on improving education quality in post-pandemic era, presented by the Faculty of Psychology and Education of Universitas Muhammadiyah, Sidoarjo, and the Faculty of Education of University Malaya, Malaysia. Thank you. My name is Wahyu, and I'll be your guide from the first until the last session of the main presentation today. And I feel so delighted to be here to find all of you eager to engage with the issues that we face nowadays, which is about the need to share knowledge and idea from 4 different countries, which are Indonesia, Malaysia, Brazil, and Kyrgyzstan. Distinguished speakers, guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, welcome to the online Studium Generale on improving education quality in post-pandemic era 2021. This international conference is part of program Kompetisi Kampus Merdeka. It is a program held by the Indonesian government to improve the quality of Indonesian education, and the psychology department won the grant to conduct this. Thank you, Prof. Husaina Banu Inayatullah as the Deputy Dean for Research and Development, as your care and commitment to work with us to support this program. Hopefully this seminar is not only for knowledge idea, but also may become part of our journey to start, implement, and strengthen our warm relationship with different institutions from different countries. Distinguished speakers, guests, ladies and gentlemen, the need of facing the new normal and improving the education quality in post-pandemic era is a wake-up call for many. We are surely hope that the pandemic will end, but most of all believe that the effect will remain there with different situation and condition. To eliminate the COVID-19 and find solution to its effect are endeavored through research in various fields and science. Hopefully we can find the cure and the new situation can be adapted. Various efforts have been made by all countries in various sectors such as health, economic, social, and of course, education. The new adjustment so far is made to live with the situation by following the health protocols, such as wearing masks and then washing hands, and also doing social distance. The goal is the education quality may be recovered and improved as well, while the health condition can be maintained. There are 4 speakers we have today. Those are Dr. Ricardo Oliveira dos Santos. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. From Pontifical Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The second will be Dr. Abalova Nazgul from Department of Regional and Cultural Studies, Kyrgyzstan University. And then the third will be Professor Dr. Zahari bin Ishaq from Faculty of Education, University of Malaya, Malaysia. And the last will be Dr. Ahtim Wahyuni from the Faculty of Psikologi and Education of Universitas Muhammadiyah, Sidoarjo. Each presenter will have approximately 20 to 30 minutes only to present his or her presentation. So please allow me to remind you gently about the time later. The first presenter will be Dr. Ricardo Oliveira dos Santos. Before he makes his presentation, I would like to tell you again that from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, time, it is 10 hours behind local time, Jakarta, which means it is almost midnight there. Good evening, Dr. Ricardo. Can I see you?
Yes, I think you can see me. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's a great honor for me to be here. Thank you very much.
How are you, Dr. Ricardo?
Very, very fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. As you rightfully said, we're approaching midnight here in Brazil.
Okay. Thank you for the time. We are the one who should say thank you for the seminar, and we do apologize for the time, which may not suit you a lot.
No problem, no problem.
Okay, I will read briefly about Dr. Ricardo's CV. So frankly speaking, when I Google your name, I found a professional football player from Brazil. Well, I'm not sure it is not you.
No, it's not me.
Okay, So I found a better result that Dr. Ricardo Oliveira dos Santos is a lecturer and deputy coordinator for undergraduate program at the Institute of International Relations, Pontifical Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He holds a PhD in International Political Economy from Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and master and bachelor degree in international relations, both in Rio. I hope I pronounce it correctly. Visiting scholar of the Multinational Institute of American Studies at New York University 2019, along with the other presenters today. And then visiting research fellow of the Political Science Department, Wharton Institute for International and Public Affairs at Brown University 2012. He worked as an assistant professor at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Political Science Department 2014 up to 2016. Surely he has academic professional experience in the field of international relations, working for several institutions such as British Consulate General, and then United Nations Information Center of Brazil, and then United Nations Human Settlement Program, and then let me see, Brazil Center for International Relations, Brazilian Peace Operation Joint Training Center, and I hope I already mentioned all of them. The last might be Latin American Council of Social Science and UFRG. Without further ado, let's start the first presentation by Dr. Ricardo. The screen and 20 minutes of presentation are yours, Doctor.
Thank you very much, my dear friend. Hello, everyone. Good morning And thank you very much for attending the international seminar on multicultural education and development, wisdom from the three continents. It's a great honor for me to be part of this team of experts and to travel virtually from Brazil to Indonesia and Southeast Asia as well. So I'm feeling very honored to be here. Thank you very much for the kind invitation. My special thanks go to the Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo for the kind invitation. I would also like to thank University of Malaya and Campus Merdeka for organizing and supporting such an incredible event. Today, I would like to share some thoughts regarding the challenges and setbacks Brazil are recently facing in the areas of teaching, research, and science in general. It is worth noting that even before this global health crisis that we are all experiencing nowadays, our country, due to a political turmoil in 2015, is going through a severe political, economic, and social crisis. In the context of Dilma Rousseff impeachment in 2015, the Brazilian Federal Senate approved a constitutional amendment to limit the public spending, which of course covers the area of the education, but also transportation, science, and many more. The objective of this amendment is to limit the growth of government expenses, and it was proposed by the federal government for the purpose of overcoming the country's economic and financial crisis that started, as I just mentioned, in 2015, 2016, 2017 as well. The amendment establishes that the government can only spend the same amount that was spent in the previous year, corrected only for inflation. The measure, look how outrageous this policy is, as I'm going to mention later on during my presentation. This measure limits for 20 years all federal expenses of a given year to the budget of the previous year, as corrected by an official index, as I just mentioned. The rule is applicable to the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government. Any branch of the federal government or its agencies that fails to limit the growth of expenses will be prevented in the following year from adjusting salaries, hiring staff, conducting public tenders, except for vacancy replacement, or creating new expenses until their expenses return to the limit established by the amendment.
Thank you. Sorry, Dr. Ricardo, can we help you to share the screen?
Yes, I sent my presentation to acting, but I don't have the presentation with me in this computer. So I would appreciate if you could share. For me.
Puwit, could you please help us? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So if we can move forward to the next slide, we can see that the United Nations condemned this proposed amendment to the Constitution, as we can see in the slide. So if we can move forward the next slide, we can see the position of the United Nations regarding this constitutional amendment that is considered, of course, unconstitutional because it's changed the Constitution and, of course, not only limits the public spending on education, but it also brings several problems in areas of science, health, and as you all can see, Brazil is one of the most impacted countries in the world due to the pandemics, due to the coronavirus. So all these expenses that is obliged to be advanced by our Constitution was limited by the government in 2015, and we are still suffering the consequences of all these budget limits that was imposed by this policy. So I would really appreciate if we can move forward to the next slide. For me, it appears the first slide, so it's not moving on. I don't know what's happening, but we can see through that slide that the United Nations, of course, stated that this policy endangers the Brazilian society. Just go back, please. Yeah, this one. Thank you very much. The next one, please. I think we're facing, yeah. So as we can see by the statement made by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Rights to Education, Combo Bolivary, he said that the government plans to freeze social spending in Brazil for 20 years are entirely incompatible with the country's human rights obligations. The principal and unavoidable effect of a proposed amendment to the Constitution designed to lock in a budget freeze in order to show fiscal prudence will be to harm the poor for decades to come. If adopted, this amendment would lock in the inadequate and rapidly dividing expenditure on health care, education, and social security, thus putting an entire generation at risk of social protection standards well below those currently in place. It will hit the poorest and most vulnerable Brazilians the hardest, will increase inequality levels in an already very unequal society. And that definitely signals that social rights are a very low priority for Brazil in the next 20 years. So this unconstitutional policy advanced under Michel Temer government, as I just mentioned, are endangering the Brazilian society, helping to create a more unequal and divided country. The statistics demonstrate, for instance, that Brazil is one of the most impacted countries in the world by COVID-19. I call this policy an unconstitutional one because according to our own constitution, the state has the right to ensure equal and free education to its citizens. And all these limits imposed by the constitutional amendment privilege some social classes and institutions. So let's see in those slides. So if we can move forward, I would appreciate it, because we can see some parts of the Brazilian constitution that states that the Brazilian state has the right to ensure an equal and free education to all its citizens. And according to this milestone document that was approved in 1988, the Brazilian government is obliged to advance in policies that include all the Brazilian population, that includes all its citizens, in order to create a more equal and more well-developed country. But unfortunately, as we can see, and the pandemic is exacerbating, is deepening this problem in Brazil, the Brazilian state has been unable to provide such rights to its population. Quite the contrary, in the context of the pandemics, we can see that the Brazilian government is cutting even more the education expenses, which in turn is creating several problems to the Brazilian scientists and the Brazilian society as a whole. So if we can move forward to the next slide, we can see some parts of the Brazilian constitution that states these rights of the Brazilian states to its citizens when it comes to education. According to the Brazilian, let just me present some statistics right now in order to have a better grasp of what we're facing, not only in the context of the pandemics, but also in the last few years. According to the government agency that is responsible to realize, to conduct a national survey on several matters, this agency is called the Brazilian Institute of Geographic and Statistics. There are still more than 60 million illiterate people in the country. Moreover, illiteracy rates vary according to criteria such as region, income, age, color, or race. Thus, of the more than 16 million illiterate people accounted for, 11.46 million are 15 years of age or older, of which 26% are white and 73% are black or brown. Illiterates over 16 years old totals 5.87 million, of which 29% are white and 70% are black or brown. Still, according to the Brazilian Institute of Geographic and Statistics, the average years of study among people aged 15 and over is 10.3 years among whites and 8.7 years among blacks or browns. The survey also shows that among people aged 25 or over, 66.3 million, which corresponds to 51%, had completed only elementary school in 26 when the data were last collected, and just under 20 million people of that age, which corresponds to 15.3%, had completed higher education, of which 16.9% were women and 13.5% men. Therefore, there is still a huge Brazil without education. So this bad scenario, unfortunately, came even before the pandemic that we are facing nowadays. According to the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, 5 million children between ages 6 and 17 in Brazil didn't have access to education in November 2020, just more recently data that we've just collected through the efforts of the United Nations. This is the worst situation in 2 decades. More than 4 million of them were enrolling in schools, but had no remote learning or in-person classes in 2020. School closures due to the pandemics, of course, affected children unequally, with the greatest impact on Black or Indigenous children and adolescents, and those from lower income households. For 2021, this year, President Jair Bolsonaro blocked or froze 2.7 billion, or almost 20% of the education budget. Milton Ribeiro, who is the education minister, supported a presidential veto, later overturned by Congress, of a bill that would have provided emergency funds to increase access to the internet for both students and teachers. The education ministry had for primary education 48.2 billion reais, our national currency for 2020, but spent only 32.5 billion, the lowest amount in a decade, according to the non-governmental organization called All for Education, in Portuguese entitled Todos pela Educação. The Education Ministry also reduced spending on its connected education program, which aims for universal access to high-speed internet in basic education. It committed only 100.3 million to the program. The Parliament Monitoring Committee reported less than half of what we had allocated in the previous year. So what we can see is that Brazil is unfortunately facing several challenges, setbacks regarding the government's expenses in the areas of education, teaching, and researching. Of course, this scenario only favors one social class, including the private sector, that is profiting a lot from this scenario. So what we are witnessing recently in Brazil is that this educational collapse is favoring only some sectors of the Brazilian education. There is a high amount of the population that unfortunately don't have access to a good education. It's in addition to all this difficult scenario, it's very difficult from the scientist's point of view. I came from a university, a private one, and that is, of course, facing all the consequences of these government cuts in the area of education. But not only in my university, of course, there are several public universities, institutions in Brazil that is closing or is unable to conduct its activities for the next years. So one avenue for one solution for that, we are still mobilizing several civil society actors in order to create a more equal and a more just and more democratic society, because according to the Constitution, education is of course strictly related to the democratic process Brazil went through since 1988. So as much as the population get access to this good educational system, the more the Brazil will become a democratic state. And all this pandemic is worsening this scenario, as I just mentioned. President Jair Bolsonaro, he has an intentional policy of reducing the educational budget. We are in the process of another election. So in this very year, he's allocating some resources for his re-election that is to be disputed in the next year. So the scenario is not as easy as we can imagine, but of course, we are trying to mobilize civil society actors. We're trying to advocate for better education for the Brazilian society, for all social classes. And we only can do that by mobilizing civil society, academics, scientists in general, that we are all opposing these political policies that, of course, endangers not only our universities, our schools, but also our country, thinking of in terms of national security. As I just mentioned before during my presentation, Brazil was one of the most impacted countries in the world due to the coronavirus. So, of course, this was directly related to these cuts that I just mentioned, because there is no money for our national health program that covers all the Brazilian segment. And of course, as I just mentioned, one of the ways of overcoming this difficult scenario is to, of course, mobilize civil society to oppose these policies and to fight for a more equal and free Brazilian society. Thank you very much for the invitation. I hope you can all understand what I just mentioned in my presentation. And once again, I feel very honored to be here, to be part of this very important international conference. And I remain at the disposal of the audience for further questions. I can send my personal contacts to Acting. She can share to all the participants. And I'm really sorry for not being able to stay here throughout the end of the conference. Yeah. As my friend Yahoo said, we are approaching midnight in Brazil, and I'm going to lecture tomorrow at 7 a.m. Quite busy agenda. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Dr. Ricardo. We do understand that it is midnight already. It's not only almost, it is midnight already. Well, thank you, Dr. Ricardo, for giving us the picture of the situation in Brazil and condition there related to the pandemic situation, the political and even education and health. It is, well, it is a good point of view for me in particular to hear and to see different perspective of Brazil instead of football and perhaps Ronaldo or Neymar. Well, I hope the challenge that had by Brazilian government and education sector, we hope that we have better situation, and including in education and health in Brazil, and for all of us. It is also a challenge for Indonesian government, and I'm sure for the other countries, particularly from where the presenters today come from. Thank you, Dr. Ricardo. We may say good night to you. You may call the night because you have to prepare for tomorrow's class. And once again, we do hope that maybe some of us may contact you if there is a question, and we can share it to Bu Ahtim, and then she can send it to you. Thank you. Okay. The next presenter will be, let me check, Dr. Abalova Nazgul. She is Associate Professor from Department of Regional Culture Studies, Kyrgyz State University. Jakarta, Indonesia time is 1 hour ahead of Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. Dr. Abalova, are you there, Doctor?
Yes, I'm here.
It's good to see you. How can I call you, Dr. Nazgul or Dr. Abalova?
Oh, it's better to say Dr. Nazgul.
Okay, Dr. Nazgul, it's good to see you. How are you, Dr. Nazgul?
I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Wahya Taufik. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay.
And first of all, I would like to say my thanks to Dr. Ahtim Wahyane, who invited me to participate in this such wonderful seminar, which is very useful for us as people who was in science. And second one, I would like to say thanks to the all University Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo's staff who is making these nice events, and of course to the dear moderator, Mr. Wahya Taufik. Yes.
Yeah, just why you like asking me why me? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And your dean, Dr. Ahtim Wahyane, it's a special thanks to you.
Okay.
And first, you will just manage, or just let me start my presentation.
Let me read briefly your CV, Dr. Nazgul.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
I just received it just now. Let me read it, some of it for the audience. So Dr. Nazgul is Associate Professor from Department of Regional and Cultural Studies, Kyrgyz State University. For those who are not familiar, the Kyrgyz Republic, it nears to Russia, and even when I Google last night, 90% of the citizens speak Russian. Is that right, Dr. Nazgul?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, post-Soviet country. Yeah.
Yeah, but mostly the citizens are Muslim.
Yes.
Okay.
30%. Yeah.
Okay. And Dr. Nazgul was also member of Multinational Institute of American Studies, along with Dr. Ricardo and Dr. Ahtim in 2019. And he has done some international visit, like in India, National Institute of Advanced Studies, summer course on philosophy for the social science and humanities, June 2009. And then in Netherlands, Institute of International Relations, Klingendale, September 2015. And then another visit to Turkmenistan, joining regional training workshop, protecting national abroad in the context of crisis, to July 2018. And then, of course, the current one is visited to the New York, USA, Myers New York University. Let me see it again, the other information that I may present to you. Well, she has a PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Oh, from India. So you speak Indian as well then?
No.
You don't. Okay. Okay. And she has postgraduate course from Bishkek Humanities University, Social Philosophy, and then professional faculty of Slavic Studies, Bishkek Humanities University,
Yeah.
and then from Russian language and literature, and
Yes.
then what else?
I think it's enough.
Yep. Yeah, perhaps that's what I can read for you. You can compile it, perhaps, Dr. Maskul, to complete the information. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's enough. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Nazgul, 20 minutes is yours. Yeah.
Yes.
Perhaps I
Thank
will
you.
remind you gently if it is more. Yeah. Time is yours, Dr. Nazgul.
Thank you so much. Let me start.
Do you need an assistant to share the screen, Doctor?
Just 1 minute. It's visible? It's fine?
It's good. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Wait. Just 1 minute. Yeah. The topic of my presentation is the ethnic diversity and language space of modern Kyrgyzstan. Because I belong to the Department of Regional and Cultural Studies, and telling about the pandemic situation, I decided to do this is the belong with the ethnic diversity and to show how we try to fight with this terrible situation, which is not only in our country. I think it's all over the world. Yeah. A little bit small information about Kyrgyzstan, because I think it's a little bit I should show where we situated. As you know, we situated in Central Asia, but it's a post-Soviet country which was belong to the Soviet Union, and we usually located exactly at northeast of Central Asia. And we bordered with three countries, Central Asia. It's Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, and China to the east. And the Kyrgyz, it's derived from the Turkic word for tea. It's like from the mythical hero Manas, which was the legendary hero who united 40 regional people. That's why Kyrgyzstan, Kyrgyz, it means literally we are 40. And our territory is only 199,000 square meters. We are not that much to big country. Population, it's the 6 million. And the capital, as you mentioned, Mr. Vahia, it's the Bishkek, because I graduated from the Bishkek Humanities University. And we got our independence in 1991. And the main, our state language is the Kyrgyz, and the official language Russian. As you mentioned, dear moderator, yes, we speak Russian as well, because we belong to post-Soviet country. And I think only we are one country in Central Asia where Russian language has a status official language. Nowadays, of course, if you see the geopolitics, Kyrgyzstan is a borderline situation between four systems of large spaces. It's the Russian, it's the Eurasian, Islamic, of course, Western American, and Chinese. But after all, see the geopolitical location, our country, that's why we led multi-vector foreign state policy. And the country is today at the center of collision of the global interest. It's the four very big countries as Russia, USA, China. when we got independence into 1991, the first year of our independence days, our country, most important issues was the definition of the effective national policy. And for this purpose, in 1994, we established the Assembly of the Peoples of Kyrgyzstan. As you see the data, that time in 2009, 71% were Kyrgyz, 14 Uzbeks, Russian was 7 point. But in other countries, as Dungans, Uyghurs, Tajik, Tatars, Azerbaijan, I will not tell every nations. It's almost 100 different ethnic groups. And then since the last census, it was in 1989, our country was that time still in the part of the Soviet Union. We had Kyrgyz increased from that point from the 52 till 73 in 2020. Then the Uzbeks, Dungans, Tajik also increased. These days, on the contrary, Russian, it's decrease from 21 to 5 because it's the effect of migration, which so many Russian people, they migrated to Russia as a home country. Now, for a long time, as you see, the ethnic policy and harmonization of relation between the ethnic groups was left to chance. But we had very tragic events in 2010. It was the inter-ethnic clash in the country. It was a very big tragedy for us. From that day, the first steps were taken at the state level because they should see how to formate the inclusive civil nation and civil identity. And after a protected process of discussion, the concept of the development of civic society, Kyrgyz Jaranlı, it means if you translate into English, it will be like Kyrgyz civil society. For 2020, for 2026 was adopted last year. Our president, now 1 year we have new president, he said that diversity is our wealth. Of course, we realize that it's, first of all, we should appreciate, we should respect all nations who lived in our country. Because Kyrgyzstan is not only the country for the Kyrgyz, it's a country for the 100 nations who lives in our country. The situation which started in 2020, it's a coronavirus pandemic. It's a very, I also should say that it's a very big tragedy for all country. It's swept the country in 2020 and constrained the livelihoods of the citizens for 2 years. But see, it's a terrible situation. The terrible. Oh, sorry.
Tak bisa bahasa Inggris.
Shall I start? Or some voices coming. It's fine. Did you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah,
sorry.
we can hear you.
And see this situation showed how our people, the ordinary people, they demonstrated the incredible level of citizenship that we doubted earlier. They considered civic society identity to be only a declaration. We thought that, but this is self-organization and mobilization of the people in the name of common supra-individual interest during a pandemic showed new properties of civic identity. As you see, just ordinary people started to collaborate to organizing such help to the people who were suffering a lot. And just even people who had no medical education, they just started to help to our doctors in the local places in the city, because they showed that how we were not ready to face such a tragedy. And this is the show how we should identify ourselves as the citizens of Kyrgyzstan, not only the belonging to the some ethnic groups. We should feel that we belong to this country. and from each of us depends our prosperity. Today, we have the identity that has historically evolved over the past 30 years in natural conditions. In function, it functions according to its natural laws. You know, it's the really natural laws, gathering and the regathering depending on the socio-economic and political situation in the country. And we show that social societies sometimes is more powerful than the political situation. At the same time, the role of state policy was too much minimal, too much. And the question of the who are we, citizen of the Kyrgyz Republic, representatives of our own ethnic groups, representatives of our village, because rural places, we have too much rural places, a representative of our religion, because it also very vulnerable question, which religion we do belong. There is no single answer to these questions. It's a little bit about ethnic diversity. And I will tell a few words about the language space, the small, not too much. As we know, the multilingual and multicultural education will help to avoid limitation, cultural and economic isolation, and will provide training at the level of modern requirements. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the Kyrgyzstan, the status of two languages is legally enshrined. The state language is the Kyrgyz language, it's my mother tongue, and the official, it is the Russian. And see, I am working at the Faculty of Oriental Studies and International Relations. And every faculty, every department, they teach 2 languages. For example, in our faculty, we are teaching Chinese language, Korean, and Arabic. And Turkish language and the English is is optional. They will start to choose from the 3rd year. What I want to say that language space in Kyrgyzstan, nowadays we see the influence of Korean wave, which is called Hallyu, and among the young people, the Korean language is more popular. Second one, the Chinese language is popular for the business people, because we just situated near China, we have too much business with the China, and the Arabic, which people want to be more religious. I always ask to my students, why you choose this language, you know? And now I have some point of view. People who wants to do nice business, they learn Chinese. Who wants to be more fashionable, more stylish, you know, they want to learn Korean. And who want to be more religious, they learn Arabic. This year, we got our independence in 1991. That's why this year we celebrated 3rd anniversary of its state independence. It was very big function, but due to the pandemic situation, it was not celebrated as a festival. But the questions which we ask ourselves for the 30 years of our independence, it's that how has our society changed? How have we also changed? And who are we? Still these questions here. What have we become? What do we expect from the future? And these questions still remain without a satisfactory answer. They require further scientific reflection, serious analysis, and evaluation, of course, as well as summing up certain results. And I would like to conclude my presentation saying that the process of transformation of post-Soviet Kyrgyzstan continues, because 30 years, it's nothing for the history. It's just we wanted to be follow this model of country, this model of country. That's why Kyrgyzstan is so much to discover. And thank you so much for your attention. I am very happy to be with you for the Universitas Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo, because the first time when I see the Indonesian people, and I was so happy, blessing with the Allah, to meet Dr. Ahtim Wahyani at the New York University, and Dr. Ricardo also. and see how the ordinary people we can make the history, you know. Maybe we just not realize that we are making history, but they see our meeting in the New York now making them such nice of seminar. And
Yep.
even first time I meet the doctor or Mr. Wahya, you
Yeah.
know, because before I didn't know who we are, and now I already know who is the Mr. Wahya Taifi.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm very happy, and all inshallah, maybe someday we will meet face to
Inshallah.
face. Yeah, because this is pandemic situation, you know. Sometimes I'm just thinking, you know, that calling the time that the pandemic and pre-pandemic time, post-pandemic time, you know, it's very terrible. And hopefully someday it's the word, even the word, it's like coronavirus pandemic will that's away from our dictionary.
Yeah.
Because it when you just listen, hear these words, you go into the depression, you know, because it's really terrible. We are facing 2 years this is problem in Kyrgyzstan also. Now it's called 4 wave of this is pandemic. First wave was terrible. The second wave also was terrible. You know, hopefully all it will be over. Nice to see you. Yeah, inshallah. And yes, assalamu alaikum to everyone. Yes, if you have question, I will be happy to answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Nazgul. And it is also good to know you, Dr. Nazgul. So in Kyrgyzstan, the status of these two languages is the state, which is Kyrgyz language, and then the official is Russian. There are two languages, and also they learn Chinese, Korean, and Arabic. So, and also English, of course. How many languages can you speak, Dr. Nazgul?
Which?
How many languages can you use or speak?
Oh my God, only
You
3
have-
languages.
You have
Come on.
Russian, you have Kyrgyz.
Yes, Russian, because my BA was in Russian language and literature, because I belong to small village and I came to the city to learn Russian.
Okay.
And I teach Russian, but I teach Kyrgyz in India for 5 years.
Wow.
Because Kyrgyz language is a completely different language from the Russian. Because Kyrgyz language belong to the Turkey group of language, Russian belong to the Slavian. It's a completely different.
Okay.
And yes, a little bit I learn English, as you see, and not that much.
Means not little bit. We can speak English very good.
Thank you.
And of course with Russian accent.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Can you speak Korean or Arabic or Chinese?
No, a little bit just to say hello, you know, just because. No.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, because see, I am teaching too much subjects as a social sciences, you know, just the religion, philosophy, you know, sometimes I feeling myself as a student, because every year new subject coming, and then you have to learn this subject, and we are changing our education system, and new subjects you should know teach, you know, and then that's why language really now I have no time for the language. But I'm very happy to know about Indonesia, you know.
Yes.
I have my friends now, they asked him, I will go someday.
You can include me as your friend, so we can contact each other soon, perhaps, so we can make another collaboration, especially you
good
to you
idea.
with our university and your university. It might be a better idea to strengthen this cooperation.
Yes.
So the Kyrgyzstan is a borderline situation between 4 systems of large spaces. So you belong to Russian, Islamic, and Western American, and also Chinese. So since 1989, the diversity of there is one sentence that I hear that I like to quote here from the president of Kyrgyz, because we have similar quotation. And the president of Republic of Kyrgyz, Zaparov, says that diversity is our wealth. In Indonesia, we also have, we call it official national motto. We call it Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which means unity in diversity. I think more or less the same.
Yeah, thank you. Nice.
You're welcome. So, multilingual and multicultural education will have to avoid limitation, so cultural and economic situation, isolation, and hopefully we will provide more training at the level of modern requirement, like what you just said. Thank you,
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Naskul. So there will be a question and answer session at the end of the
Yes.
presentation of all speakers. The next presenter will be Professor Zahari bin Ishaq, now from Kyrgyzstan. We moved to Malaysia to meet Associate Professor from Department of Education and Psychology and Counseling, Faculty of Education, Professor Zahari bin Ishaq. Are you there, Professor? How are you, Professor Zahari?
Alhamdulillah, sehat. How are you, my brother Wahyu?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. Thank you, Professor, for coming. We do
No.
appreciate for our for cooperation.
I suppose to say thank you to the organizer who really invited me today, and I was really appreciate for what done by University Muhammadiyah and Malaysia and Indonesia and Kyrgyzstan and also Brazil. I was happy to be with everyone. Thank you so much, my brother Wahyu.
You're welcome, Professor. First of all, let me read briefly about your vitae, Prof. Zahari. So once again, Professor Zahari bin Ishaq is Associate Professor from Department of Educational Psychology and Counseling, Faculty of Education, University of Malaya, Malaysia, and he is an educationalist and psychologist from University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and he specializes in quantitative research and conduct training for academic researcher and educational administration. And also, apart from that, Dr. Zahari has presented his paper at international and local conference. There are so many publications he has done, and he has academic qualification, PhD, education and social science from the same University of Malaya, and then he has master from Psychologi Pendidikan, University of Putra, Malaysia, or UPM, and then bachelor degree, teaching Malay at first language, University of Putra, Malaysia, the same university. And then I think I may conclude that his area of expertise is educational psychology, especially in personality, learning psychology, child development, and gifted and talented education, especially Malay language. I hope I have mentioned all of them in brief, Professor Zahari. Now we have 20 minutes for Dr. Zahari to present your presentation. Time is yours, Prof.
Okay, thank you so much, my brother Wahyu Taufik. And before we start, can I request to present my presentation? I just like to try to present first my slide. Okay, possible. Okay, so can everyone see?
Yep.
That's great. You can see that is technically. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. As everybody can see, I will try to divert a little bit on my title, and I will try to talk about the lost generation or a lost learning generation during COVID-19, the reality and recommendation. Okay, before I start, I would like to thank Dr. Atim, the Dean, and so Dr. Huzaina, and also our panel from Russia, Dr. Ricardo, and also another panel, Dr. Naskul from Kyrgyzstan. It's very lovely to meet you. Thank you so much, and all the participants. And I think a little bit, the moderator just informed regarding on my profile and quite brief. Thank you so much for the very brief regarding on my profile. So I currently at the Department of Education Psychology under Facultas of Education Studi Malaya, and I would like to start my presentation today on the lost generation. So if we talk about the lost generation, it's just started from the author, poet from US or the famous American author. So Ernest Hemingway, Stern, all T.S. Eliot, all these people talks about the generation who reached adulthood during the immediately World War I. So in other words, this generation seemed to be lost, delusionized, horror of war, and they rejected the traditional of the older generation. So the distorted of the version of American dream and gender. So the word lost generation usually refer to the war. When the war take place, war create lost survival. I put it that way. And most of the survival will have suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And if you look at the 2016, after the Iraq war, so an average 20 of the veterans died from suicide every day. So this modern war create a modern lost generation. 30% of the returning veterans either have or will develop PTSD. So that's very sad during the war. But now, now it seems to be that we have another round of the lost generation. I will try to more focus on education and psychology a little bit, so that we can understand the reality and how try to overcome the whole issue of this pandemic, COVID-19. So I would say that, when we talk about the post-pandemic era, because that's why I was very happy when Mr. Muhammadiyah and Mr. Malaya organized this conference or this webinar, because to see on the post-pandemic era. So I would like to quote from the UNICEF director So he said, this is the first truly global crisis most of us have seen in our lifetime, and it will be not the last. No matter where we live, the pandemic affects all of us, and children have never been at so much risk. But worse is to come as the global economic crisis unfolds, as the world deals with the economic fallout from the pandemic and its effect on the government, household budget, and the private sector. The risks of the children are increasing, not decreasing. We must protect the decades of past investment in children. So I will start my presentation by looking at the data globally. Of course, the data is from the UNICEF and it's from November 2020. It's already November 2020 end. So even though we can use as a benchmark to see the reality of this COVID-19 and how to look from the education perspective. Number one, you see, the data show 11% of the 25.7 million of COVID-19 infection in 87 countries are among children and adolescents under 20 years. You just imagine that 11% is all under age of 20 years old, and they need to be at school. They need to have education. But more infection occur among adolescents from age to 19 compared to a child 0 to 9. So 6 to 7 million child under age 5 suffer from wasting or acute malnutrition. 14% rise that may translate into more than 10,000 additional child deaths per month, mostly in the sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. So at the moment, we have 140 million additional children are living in monetary poor household due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So if we'll base on this data, the pandemic really hurt everyone in this world. So, and furthermore, 3 billion people globally have no access to place to wash their hand, to a place to wash their hand. 700 child die every day from disease caused by the lack of inadequate water, sanitation, and hygiene. Gender-based violence is predicted to increase by another 50 million cases for every 3 months of the COVID-19 lockdown. 70% of the mental health services from the children and adolescents are disrupted. Most mental health conditions developed during adolescence, young people especially, are all at risk. So the impacts pondered by young people missing out on peer support and some of the biggest moments of their life due to the school closure, cancelled event, and postponed exam. So we can see everybody was affected by this pandemic. So that's where we come to a new lost generation during pandemic. And sadly to say that, when we talk about the school closure, due to COVID-19, 90% of the students around the world does not go to school. More than 111 millions of them are at least developed country. So uneven access to digital learning resources, parental supports are amplifying the digital divide, inequality among young people. So these are the problems that we face during this pandemic globally. And because of that, I would say that we try to look in the Malaysian perspective. I think Malaysian or Indonesian or Brazil or Kyrgyzstan share the same issue regarding on the education. So, but in Malaysia, we can see that, we have 35 weeks of school closure, one of the longest in the world during this pandemic. The school is closed. The students are not able to go to school. They have to do online learning. So these are all the things, So when when school is closed for such a long period or for the long time, there is an increasing fear that more children in study result in the high school dropout rate compared with the pre-pandemic period. So school, as a comparison, I just try to compare when school in the high income countries were only closed between 0 and 16 weeks. For example, like United Kingdom only closed for 16 weeks. And of course, later on, we can always have some arguments regarding on this school closure or regarding on the Indonesia, Brazil, or even Kyrgyzstan. So even look at the Sweden. Sweden does not even close the school. So these are all the impacts during this pandemic. And based on the My Reader, or in Malaysia, we call it as a Persatuan Literasi Anak Malaysia. Malaysian, which said more than 1,000 students had missed out on school within just a few days in January 2021. So most of those who missed the school, is 80% from the family in the B40 or bottom 40%. So, but on the other hand, on the 2018, this 2018 was before the pandemic start. So the program for international student assessment, or the PISA, revealed that 46% of the Malaysian students tested at the age of 15 could not read at the baseline proficiency level needed to effectively participate in the society. So, and then we have the COVID-19 pandemic. So I would say that all this group of people, this generation, children from the poor or rural community, refugees or children with special needs are the most affected by this learning gap. So as an educator, we see that, it doesn't mean anything if we are success in our education during pandemic, but a lot of our friends, a lot of our families, other families is having the lost generation or a lost learning generation gap. So these are the issues that to us as educator is important, and we really hope some recommendation later on that I will try to share will benefit everyone. So in November 2020, 37%. This has happened in Malaysia. I'm not sure about the Indonesia statistic or the data, because this is the reality that we talk during the pandemic, when we talk about the online learning, when we talk about the digital divide. So we found that at the during November 2020, it's about 1.7 million school students did not have any electronic device to participate in online lesson. They don't have a laptop, tablets, or computer to follow up on the online lesson. So because of this gap, they are to be isolated and left behind in online learning. So, and that data sometimes really shock everyone, and that's where the Malaysian government, the NGOs are giving all these gadgets to the poor families in order for them to follow the online learning. So this was happened November 2020, and we really hope by November 2021 the numbers will be reduced. And we have to thank all these NGOs, all those who really help the poor to buy and to give free the gadget. And that is the beauty of a caring society that we have. And that's where, at the end of the day, the emergence of a lost learning generation take place. Why? Because the whole issue is to match the classroom learning in online setting. Let's say we put at a very simple case. Let's say everyone have equipped with the necessary facilities. The laptop is there, the gadget is there, the internet connection is there, but still our students really learning something from the online learning process? That is a very big question mark that need to be addressed, not just by the educator, but every single person in this world. We may have all the sophisticated gadget. We can have all the internet, 5G or even 10G. But do our students really get full enough information during the online learning? That is the question that needs to be answered by everyone. So I would say that the impact territory level will be greater among the current preschooler. I would say that, and the primary student. So I would say that there are the most affected groups or generation, the preschooler, because you just imagine for 2 years, the child at the age of 6 years or 5 years old does not go to school physically, and they don't learn anything during the first 2 years kindergarten, and out of sudden they just go for the year 1. So that will be a very big gap on the lost learning generation. We have to look and address this preschooler carefully, because if we address them carefully, we might able to put the preschoolers, at least they learn something during that 2 years that they lost learning during pandemic. Of course, when we talk about the future secondary school teachers or university lecturers will have to adapt and adopt the need. And the most important thing, we all have to work extra hard to deal with the lost generation gap. And this is the heartbreaking reality experience within the next 5 years. So the lost learning generation need to be seen carefully and addressed thoroughly, not just by the government, but by each individual in this world. So I would like to quote from the Richard King, 31st March 2022. He said over 1.5 billion learners, or 82.5% of the learners around the world, affected with the 150 countries enacting nationwide closure because of the school closure, and that's where we can see that 1.5 learners have come to the stage of the lost generation. Now, I would like, that is the reality that happened today in Malaysia and all over the places. And I believe Indonesia also having the same problem. So when we talk about the online class, so when we talk about online class, you know, it's not really successful 100%. So I will say that here are some recommendations that we can think about it. Of course, there's no one, there's no answer, there's no solution for every single thing at the moment, but at least some recommendation need to be addressed carefully. Because to us, to this generation during pandemic and the school closure, online learning is hard on everyone, but undeniable. It must be the hardest for those who are unequipped with basic learning skill. This is the things that we need to see carefully because it's not easy to handle the online class. It's not just about the infrastructure that we are talking, it's about the basic learning skill that happening during the teachers or the student. So that's where I say that the policy makers, you know, they need to have urgent decision making into longer term crisis management. The key question will center on how to maintain learning and limit and control the secondary impact. So other recommendation, as I mentioned just now, there are no easy answer and solution. As I can see that the most important thing is a constructive and comprehensive method and solution need to be seen as the recommendation toward all this generation gap or the lost generation gap. So number one, I would say that we should have, you know, Educational Development Trust Council. And this is a non-for-profit organization. So we just cannot rely purely on the ministry or on the politics. We need to we need to work together. We need to be compromise every single thing through all the ideologies of the politics or whatever. The most important thing, the council, or I name it as Educational Development Trust Council, to compromise expert, professional, academician, representative from teachers and parents, association to formulate an integrated plan for the post-pandemic education. And if we have this trust council, you know, we can really see and look at the reality and overcome all the lost learning generation. Okay. And the second thing is about the most important thing is to look at the quality education and in rural and remote area. Because we have to accept now, because of the digital divide, not every places, even in Malaysia, can access with the internet, especially those who are in the remote area. They can't access the internet, but the school was closed. And for that 2 years, you know, they don't learn anything except staying at home. They lost their moments of being in school. So that's where I will always say that the installation of a fiber optic cable need to be seen urgently. This is all to ensure students based in rural and remote areas can also enjoy better digital connectivity with appropriate digital device. This whole thing is to avoid widening inequalities among our students. So because we want to close the gap, you know, to make the gap closer. between the richer and the poorer family. If not, the poorer family will be left behind and they will be known as the lost generation in education. So that is the second recommendation that I can suggest to see and to look at these problems. Okay, the third is about the most important thing, human resource, the teachers. I always believe that the teachers play an important role because we need to have passionate teachers at the moment, especially to handle the lost generation. So that's why we need to train teachers to use multimedia and online learning tools, digital skill, building the capacity for more innovative pedagogy and providing them with a lifetime support. I would say that, the most important thing is the policy should go for the lifetime support to all the teachers who need to see the next round of the student, because this will help them a lot. So we have to accept not all teachers are good in technologies. Technologies keep on changing. So if we don't really have the lifetime support to the teachers may have burned out all this kind of teaching. So, and the fourth things that we can see from the lost generation gap is the hybrid learning model. And I was very happy when my university happened to conduct the hybrid learning model. So we call all the students back to the campus. We know that, the most important thing, the students now are all in the campus, but they can have a hybrid learning model, meaning that half of them will be joining the class and half of them will be at the hostels or at the home. So this is one way, because at least the student able to have the physical class. They need to have a physical class in order to interact, because that is the core of the humanity in our education. So I would strongly suggest that the hybrid learning model should be emphasized toward all the places. And the most important things, is utilize human resource across the system, multiple function in addition to teaching, including assessment, data management, and inspection. So I will say that when we start to end our pandemic and we are going to endemic, so the most important thing to me is to have the full intervention among the students, to diagnose our student, the ability, the skill, especially the reading, the writing, and the mathematics part, the countings. The intervention is important because that will start where to address the learning loss generation. Of course, another thing that we need to see is to engage parents with the home learning environment. So as we can see, if you just based on the government, based on the school, is not strong enough to look at the learning loss generation issue. We need to engage the parent. The parent need to be involved in looking at their child development, because we have to see, we've seen a lot of cases during this pandemic. So the students are left behind. And the next thing is, we also need to see the vulnerable students, those who at the risk, there's a lot of students at the risk. For example, at the moment, even though in the Malaysia, a young child who's supposed to be in school now hunting for a job to serve the family need. So these are the issue that we need to see this group of people where they have to go works in order to support the families just for the butter and bread on the table. So my recommendation of this group of students who are at risk, the government, the policymaker ought to see carefully so that we can address the problem so that they also within our group in the process of learning. Of course, so we also agree that during this pandemics, the reality, there is abusive home environment. So I suppose that it's not happening in Malaysia, but it's all over the places. So that's where we need to have the good support from the parent, from the teachers, from the social workers, psychiatrists, psychologists, and politicians to make sure all the children emerge from the crisis.
Yeah.
Why? Because at the end of the day, whether we like it or we hate it, we need to cope and live together with this virus COVID-19. We cannot run away. Sometimes when I look at China, they already have their school is already open, the MC is already open, they're having their normal life back. And they start to have the physical classroom. And that is something that we need to consider. Why? Because I always believe that this virus COVID-19 is there.
Yep.
The most important thing is just to live, to cope with them. Either they kill us or we have to kill the virus. So that's the most important thing to me. And I would like to conclude my presentation today. This is something that I would say that among the most important things regarding on this pandemics. Child will never accept a return to a normal after the pandemic because normal was never good enough. So our post-pandemic rebuilding must meet the scale of the moment by overcoming our differences and working across generations to rebuild a world we want our child to grow up in. World Children's Day must be a day to reimagine a better future for a child, especially for those child who I classified as the lost generation. So I would say that again, the government has to play an important role. They ought to adopt and adapt the comprehensive and constructive package of support to protect our education system for better future within the next 5 years. Hard work, sincere, will help the child right toward a better and convincing future. So I say that is for today, and I really like to say thank you so much to the moderator who allowed me to present. And I now pass back the screen to my brother moderator, Wahyu. The screen is yours. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Prof. Zahari. Wow, thank you. It was very clear and patient explanation about the education situation in Malaysia. And I think it also happened in many other countries, which is about the lost generation. And there is a new term, the new lost generation or the lost learning generation because of pandemic. I think it also happened again in many other countries, including in Indonesia. There are so many backgrounds based on research as well as recommendation, and it was a very valuable information and recommendation. Started with the question whether they have the gadget, and then the next question whether they understand the materials. Well, we do agree that online learning is hard for everyone. That's why starting from this semester, our campus, University of Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo, also conduct hybrid learning, just like what you suggest, Professor Zahari. We have half student come to the campus and half other students stay at home to have online class, and then the other week the other half will come to the class, and the half who joined online class previously will join offline class to stay in the class, and it only takes for about 30 minutes to 1 hour during the meeting. We do all of this to ensure that the student connect with the situation, and we do agree that the normal situation will not the same normal situation that we expect, yeah, because the COVID-19 or the coronavirus will remain there, whether they kill us or we kill the fear for the virus. That's a very good statement. So thank you, Prof. Zahari. We will see you again later with the question and answer session. We will back to you, and we will move to the last presentation from Dr. Achtim Wahyuni. So we move back to Indonesia. Dr. Achtim Azhari, as we know all, is the Dean of Faculty of Psychology and Education of University of Muhammadiyah, Sidoarjo. Let me see this one. So Dr. Achtim Wahyuni, which one? There are two curriculum vitae that I should read. So it was the new one, Bu Atim.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So let me read it briefly for you, Bu Atim. So she is born to 20 March 1973, and he lives in Sidoarjo. She has a PhD degree or doctoral degree from University of Negeri Malang, and then master and bachelor degree from University Islam Negeri Sunan Ampel, Surabaya. And then she has.
That must be, excuse me, not must be read all.
Yeah, I try to read it briefly, Bu Atim. Which one? She has. Yeah, at the moment she is a lecturer at University of Muhammadiyah Sidoarjo for source since 2002, and then instead of teaching at UMSIDA, she is also active in one of the largest organization in Indonesia, which is Asia, since 2003, and then she is also active at doing research and social activities, and become speakers and workshop and other training activities. I hope it already represents your curriculum vitae, Bu Achtim. Okay, it's time for you to present your presentation, Bu Achtim. You have 20 minutes to present it.
Please,
time is yours.
Yes, I will share my screen for you.
Please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And now we are after fly from Brazil, then Kyrgyzstan and Malaysia, and now we apply to Indonesia. My presentation title is Multicultural Education, a Chance in Indonesia in the Post-COVID-19 Era. Wait a minute. Sorry. This is my flag. And this is the profile of Indonesia. I will show you for a minute. I'm sorry.
We cannot hear the sound, Bu Ahtim.
Oh, you cannot hear the sound?
I don't know.
But you
in
can
my
see
laptop, I cannot hear.
the
But we can see the
video?
slide.
The video. I don't. The song is very nice.
So we were to hear the sound then.
I don't have me. Okay. This is a little part of profile of Indonesia. Okay, and it is a portrait of Indonesia. I think the population in Indonesia is too large, different from Kyrgyzstan, only 6 million, when Indonesia is 200 and 500 million population, Nazgul. So your population only in one region, Indonesia, when Indonesia 250 million population. And we have 756 languages, and we have 1,128 tribes, and then we have 70,504 islands and 34 provinces, 6 religions. These are the portrait of Indonesian, even though it is not all of the portrait I show here. So based on this condition, so we have to have what is diversity cultural diversity competence. What is cultural diversity competence? Cultural diversity competence as abilities and skill in the form of awareness, knowledge, and interpersonal skill in interacting with a person or a community of people who have different culture background, traditions, belief, value systems, and cultural behavior, because our condition is like that. With those 750x languages, 6 religions, 17,004 islands, and so on. So we have to have cultural diversity competence. Then what is multicultural education? Multicultural education is a set of belief and explanation that recognize and assess the importance of culture and ethnic diversity in shaping lifestyle, social experiences, personal identities, educational opportunities from individual, group, and countries. So it is important for us why we have to learn about multicultural education. And why is multicultural education important? The first one, because it will train students to respect and tolerate difference around them. Then to alternative means of conflict resolution strengthen students' cultural understanding so as not to leave cultural roots. So in education, we have to learn about all of the multicultural education. And the third is the basis for the development of the national curriculum. So our curriculum must consist of multicultural education. So on that curriculum, we will learn a lot about multicultural understanding, because we have a lot of culture in Indonesia. The important things in multicultural education are the first one, multicultural education present or provide a wide place for the processing of national differences or diversity. And then the second, multicultural education is based on Pancasila as the best choice in the plurality of the Indonesian nation. We have Pancasila, and like you said before that, Indonesia has what is lambang. What is
Bhinneka
lambang
Tunggal Ika,
symbol? Yes,
national motto.
unity in diversity.
Yeah.
And the fourth, multicultural education requires appropriate learning methods so that the internalization of values can be realized properly. So why the topic about the multicultural education I take here, like my topic here, because it is beyond challenge for us when we face COVID for 2 years. We know that phenomenon of education during COVID, like Mr. Zahari mentioned before, that all of learning, all school from kindergarten until university learning from home, using online learning. Then gadget as a part of learning media. Then communication with friends, teachers, and the environment is very limited. We only talk every day with our gadget, our laptop, and some devices. Then children tend to be individualistic. They don't care about their surrounding because they never meet their friends, their neighbor, and so on. This is a picture of the condition when COVID happened in the world. We always in front of our laptop, even though the children sit together, but they only see their gadget. Then this is the picture of us, our learning, online learning, using Zoom every day,
Including this seminar,
including this seminar using Zoom too, because this is the important media now, that Zoom or other platform is very useful for us when COVID is happening in the world. Then the change of multicultural education post-COVID era. The first, changing the comfort zone from studying at home to studying at school. Like us, even though the school has this program that we have to hybrid learning, but sometimes because we have in comfort zone, we always study using online learning for 2 years. So it is, of course, so difficult for us to change this comfort zone for studying at home to studying at school. Some of us too, ya Pak Wahyu, in university. Then changing study habit with gadget to study hand-on learning, because gadget every day be their friend. So it is so difficult for us to changing their habits to study hand-on learning. Some of parents also still worried that their children study at school. So school have program hybrid learning, and student can choose. The student will join to the class or at home. The student have a choice to choose that. Then change the habit of not interacting with other people to interact. Because we never interact with other people, so it is so difficult to change our habit to interact with others. We never communicate with people. We never communicate with others, so it is difficult to start how to interact with our friends. Then how to improve multicultural understanding in post-COVID era. This is the way we have to read the book. Then self-awareness, we have to increase our self-awareness. Then talk to a new person, because we stay at home for 2 years, so sometimes it is too difficult to start to talk with a new person. We have no self-confidence. We're afraid to a new person, and so on. Then become alive. Then ask a question. We have to be able to ask a question. So don't be afraid to ask someone about their culture or their belief. So this seminar too, you have to ask question to the presenters. It is be part of to understand about the multicultural of our other people. Then multicultural education construction in Indonesia must be placing, making, and strengthening Pancasila as the political basis for multicultural education. Because we have Pancasila as the political basis, so we have to strengthen Pancasila for basis multicultural education. Then multicultural education should be seen as a process to strengthen the recognition of the culture diversity possessed by its community and culture. And the third, curriculum development that characterize strengthening of cultural awareness and competence. Like I said before, that curriculum is be one of important component in school. So we have to develop curriculum based on multicultural understanding. So we hope that after post-COVID, we reconstruct our curriculum based on this needs. And then how is the curriculum developed? Curriculum in diverse culture perspective. Then critical and inclusive. Our curriculum must be inclusive so everyone can give recommendation, can give suggestion about our curriculum. Then the third, curriculum that fosters social responsibility, multimodal method and strategies. Cannot notice only using one model, one method and strategies. So we have to combine it as a teacher. So we have to competence about that. And the fourth, development of learning that is core in the formation of the ability to learn how to learn. It is important for us because student is a human being, so they have to understand, learn how to learn. And the quote of the last my presentation, diversity is a gift from God that must be managed, not become a threat that causes conflict. So here we invite our speaker from many countries. It is be one of the way that we have to understand about the culture of our surrounding in the world, from Brasilia, from Kyrgyzstan, from Malaysia, and so on. And that's all my speech. Thank you. Terima kasih. Obrigado. And I don't know how to say thank you for Kyrgyzstan, Nasko.
Thank you, Bu Ahtim.
Yes.
I
Obrigado.
don't know either how to say it in Brazilian language.
Brazilian is obrigado. Yeah.
Obrigado.
Obrigado. Malaysia, Malaya, same with as Indonesia. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Yes, thank you Pak Wahyu. I think that's all my presentation.
Malaysia tambah sedikit. Terima kasih daun keladi. Nanti jemput lagi.
What is daun keladi, Pak Zari?
It's a type of leaf, you know. So it's just a metaphor for the thank you. So when they say terima kasih daun keladi, besok undanglah saya lagi. Thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, in Indonesia
like pantun,
it's like pantun. Yes,
Yeah.
it's pantun, Pak Zari. Thank you, Pak Wahyu. The time.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Ahtim. Thank you for giving such a concise and a brief explanation. I think your presentation really sweet as the closing presentation, because the need of multicultural education and converse it into curriculum development, since we talk about cultural diversity, and we need to understand about the skill awareness, knowledge, and interpersonal skill, and interacting with person from different community or different cultural backgrounds. Thank you. I like to read it again, the last quote, because I think it covers all of the presentation, that the diversity is a gift from God that must be managed, not become a threat that causes conflict. I do agree with that. Thank you very much, Bu Atim, and all
You're
presenters.
here.
Since all of speakers present their presentation, I think it's time for me to open question. Anyone are welcome to raise their hand or perhaps write it down on inbox, and if there, I will read it for you. Or perhaps you want to say it directly to the speakers. Anyone from participant? Is there anyone who want to clarify us or suggest something? All right. Okay, there is a question that actually has been discussed previously from Rizky Ardi Armanan about how this country solve the, especially from the government, to overcome the pandemic related to the education. That's actually what we are discussing. Yeah. For example, in Malaysia, mostly using online learning, but I don't know about Brazil. How about from Dr. Naskul? Can you explain a little bit about how the government especially give the policy related to the education with the pandemic situation today? Dr. Naskul, are you still there?
Yes. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can give a brief explanation to satisfy
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Rizky Ardi Rahman.
Yeah. I can say only regarding to our university, because we started to teach offline from this year, from the 15th of September. And government, what they're doing, I think they just in the pandemic time, they made so many video classes, but it was for the schools, only for the schools. Higher education, I think they survived themselves. And we just learned it ourselves how to use technology for online. And from our students who was in the rural places, of course, they have no access to the internet even. And I agree with the Dr. Zaharia, that telling the lost generation, in the sense that 1 year, more than 1 year, I think it was like, you know, so many students, maybe I know about the percentage, so many students, they didn't get even to access to the internet. That's why they didn't learn even. And you know, the WhatsApp, it was the very terrible, you know, living in the 21st century. They were writing in the just paper and they're sending, you know, there. And I had to check, you know, because I should appreciate, I should respect their work. And I was just, you know, just reading and eating. I said, one day I said, see, I have also the same vision as you. My eyes also the same, please. And they say, see, they have no access to the internet. They have no even the nice phone. And that's why they're just writing and they're sending. And that's why I was telling you that civil society, I think they are very strong. And they will not even wait for the help from the government. You know, they're surviving themselves. And this year, when we started offline, I was so happy, more than happy than my students, you know, because they are coming and I can explain. And they try to, you know, I just feel that now they appreciate education more than before. You know, because they were like, it's like things, it should come in naturally. But when it is collapse, it started, they start to appreciate knowledge. And you know, they now in the classes, they are more active and they are so happy. That's why pandemic, it's I think it teach us how to appreciate ourselves, our interaction, and our education. And it's not just coming, you know, just easy way. And we have to be thanks to Allah that everything is fine now offline. We are teaching offline. Hopefully everything will be fine.
Yeah, inshallah. I mean, Thank you, Dr. Naskul. Professor Sahari, I know that you have explained a lot about the situation in Malaysia. Perhaps you can give us a brief 1 or 2 sentences about the education policy related to COVID-19 in Malaysia.
Okay, thank you so much, my brother Wahyu and Dr. Atim and also Dr. Naskul and all the participants. So regarding on Malaysia, well, as I mentioned just now, we have closed the school for quite so long. And then later on, they have just started about last 2 months, last month, they started back the physical, but it's not 100%, it's a 50%. So when they have 50%, meaning that physical 50% will be in school, the 50% will be at home. And that's where I see again, when you talk about this online class, I do agree with Naskul, those who staying in the rural and the remote area, the access to internet was limited, and some places there is no internet at all. And you just imagine for 2 years, 2 years, they don't learn anything. So preschool, for example, they should be at the kindergarten, enjoying their life, their fun life,
Yeah.
And after 2 years, they have to back in school physically, but not 100%.
Yeah.
And that's where it's just a hard work, not just for the student, for the teachers, for the educators, for the parent, for the society. That's what I always believe, in Malaysian context, we do feel this kind of pressure among the teachers because it's online, it's not easy, especially for those teachers who does not really well versed on the technology. So this is all the issue that impacts on the groups. I call it the learning loss generation. And if we don't do nothing, we do nothing about it, it will become forever within the 5 years. The next 5 years, I would say, is very crucial for everyone. I think Indonesia was there. I still remember I was in Palu before the total lockdown in Malaysia. I was in Palu doing some humanity works with my students from UN. And I still that is during the early stage of lockdown in Indonesia. And I was quite happy with the school in Palu. Even as the secondary school, the internet access is there. Well, at least when they talk about the Palu, the kid can still go to the school and have the internet connection there, and that is good. So that's where sometimes we need to see from the micro perspective. That's why I always say that in Malaysia, for those who's in the remote area, the access to internet is very limited and some places cannot be accessed. And for 2 years, there is a huge gap, and I call it a learning loss generation. Need to be addressed. Everyone. Thank you, my brother Wahyu.
Thank you, Prof. Sahari. Yeah, I remember when you say doing online for kindergarten student. The name is kindergarten, but they cannot play on the in the garden. They have to play online garden. I don't know.
Online garden.
Perhaps Bu Atim may address something. Bu Atim.
Yeah, I think it is the big challenge in Indonesia because we have a large population, bigger than larger than Malaysia and Kyrgyzstan. So it is so complicated for our government, for our institution, for our everyone to manage it. So when the condition in Indonesia is one province and another province is so different, we have area in rural areas, so it is so difficult for people to access the internet and a condition that it is impossible for people to access it. So it is be our homework for our nation or for our government to make education be good condition. So like in Malaysia experience, we can teach from Malaysia, from Kyrgyzstan to like in Kyrgyzstan now has direct learning in their school, but Indonesia still mix method, hybrid learning, and there is some school still using full online based on their condition. But now we have to try to friendly with this condition, like Mr. Zahari said, that pandemic will never end because it is the endemic era. So we have to friend with this condition. We only can protect us, vaccine with a masker and so on. So we have to run with our life, with our education. I think that's all, Pak Wahyu.
Thank you, Bu Ahtim. Dr. Nazgul, yeah, you want to add something?
Yes, you see, this is pandemic situation. They opened one very useful and very big issue. It's the relation between the parents and children, because we have so many suicide among the teenagers in this time, because parents were staying at home because it was lockdown, and then children were there together, and you see that. I think it's some psychological problem between them, because we are running to the work, coming in the evening, we spending some few times with our children, and we don't know themselves, you know, and then we had in the beginning, we had among the teenagers 15 cases of suicide. Just imagine, it's the age between 12 till 16, and it shows how parents, they don't pay attention to the children because they are always with their netbook, with their phone, and this is lockdown. They show another issue, because we have to also take this problem into our account, because it's a big issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nazgul and Professor Zahari, as well as Bu Ahtim. Let me check whether there is another question from the participant. Okay. Okay, there is no more. Is it possible to end this session and then come up with conclusion? Okay. Yeah.
Can I just say a last word before we end the session?
Okay, please, Prof.
Okay. I just want to say thank you so much again on behalf of the University of Malaya and also everyone who participated to this event.
Yeah.
And I think we really discuss a lot regarding on this post-pandemic. But still, again, you know, this is just maybe we can put it as a benchmark. In future, we don't know. We might have another round of pandemic. It may not call C-19. It may call by another name. But the pandemic is there.
Yeah.
So that's why I said this is something where when we have this kinds of intellectual discourse, we will put as a benchmark in future for that the future generation is not so-called as a lost generation, but a better future generation. We have to face, because at the next round, most probably another pandemic. Again, thank you so much, Brother Wahyu. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahtim, for inviting me. And it's very nice to see you online. Perhaps I really love Indonesia, and I wish to be there.
Thank you.
I wish to be there. And
so we can meet face to face.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, one day. At the moment, we have to go by
Hopefully.
online, but inshallah, one day we will go there physically. I will go there and visit because I have few students, you know, in Indonesia, completed PhD under me and even master under me. You know, I was happy to coach them, and this is something that I would say that the brotherhood or the bonding that we have. Thank you so much again. Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Well, there are so many big points and diverse idea and of course suggestion from each presenters from different background, countries, and even political values. And I'm sure each of you may come up with different ideas or conclusion about today's presentation. I would like to point out a few things, and please allow me to use my own language, that the challenge in education sectors what we might face might be different from one country to the others. For example, in one country, they are still struggling about finding their identity while the others are fighting about giving food or facilities for their citizen. The first thing that I would like to come up is we are human. So as human, it is our gift to be able to work together, to conduct research and science, to have new policy, create technology, and have new adaptive culture and way of life. We are good at adapting new situation in any condition. The new situation that we are now doing is the pandemic COVID-19, and the challenge should be overcome through politics, social culture, technology, and many perspectives. And like what Dr. Professor Zahari said, as academician, as educator, we are doing our intellectual discourse. That's what we can do best. Yeah? And effort from parents, teacher, and social workers, psychiatrists, psychologists, and politicians to make sure that all children and citizens emerge from this crisis. Yeah. While waiting for the new policy and situation, we should be able to cope and live together with virus COVID-19. Well, I think that's all. Thank you again, Prof. Zahari, Dr. Nazgul, and Ibu Ahtim, and all participants who joined this seminar, and also the Vice Dean from University of Malaya. Thank you very much for having this seminar. I, as moderator, return the screen to the MC. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Wahyu, that has guided today's main agenda. And of course, I want to say thank you for all of keynote speakers. And ladies and gentlemen, we finally come to the end of today's agenda. Let us close this seminar by reciting Hamdalah together.
Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim.
Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim.
Those are the agendas we have presented to you all this
Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim.
morning. We hope you learned something, and thank you so much for your attention. See you on the next occasion. Rani Syahda, as Master of Ceremony, say thank you for joining. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, MC. You are such a nice case. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nas, Pak Zahari.
Thank you, Pak Ibu. Thank you, Pak Wahyu. Okay, thank you, Dr. Nazgul. Thank you so much.
See you soon, inshallah.
Inshallah, I will be there, inshallah. Okay. The MC for today, thank you so much for a lovely MC today. Thank you so much. Okay, Ibu. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hari.
Thank you so much. Yes, have a nice day.
You too. Okay, take care, be safe, stay healthy, and stay strong. That's the motto that we have together. Thank you so much. Okay. Mashallah, subhanallah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nas.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, Tim. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Because I think this was recorded, and I don't. If you don't mind, the organizer please share the recorded thing so that anyone can just.
Yeah.